Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Walsh, a realtor and student at Clatsop Community College's Historic Preservation and Restoration program. I'm passionate about seeing places all across America that were once vibrant become vibrant again. I often hear from young people and families that they want to be part of that sense of community and a revival of our mid sized cities and small towns. Historic tax credits can help us accomplish this, but many people don't know about them. There's a lot of great information out there, but it's pretty technical. So I wanted to give people a place to start, a primer, plus some sources to continue learning more at the end. And I'm going to do it in under 8 minutes. So let's go. Since the passage of the Historic Tax Credit Program, buildings big and small have been returned to use or converted to a new use, like housing. Thousands of other buildings could benefit from the range of tax credits available to investors and even homeowners in certain states. If you're considering a building you think might be a good candidate for historic tax credits, your first stop should be your State Historic Preservation Office, also known as SHPO. These nice folks help administer the federal program and will be a main source of assistance throughout the process. The number of jobs, homes, and economic activity generated by the Historic Tax Credit Program is impressive. It's not just for big projects. Even smaller buildings, like this historic garage, can benefit. Now let's talk about the application itself, because everything is tied to that process. The first part of the application is about establishing this building as a historic structure, if it's not already listed on the National Register, or as a supporting structure in a historic district. Caution here because many buildings were nominated years ago and changes may have occurred. The NPS expects you to document conditions, uses, and changes. Just referring to the old nomination may not be sufficient. What if the building isn't listed? You must do the research to establish a timeline, historical photos, maps, articles that tell the story of why this building should be considered for the register and certified for use of historic tax credits. Part two is a detailed description of the building as it is today, along with photos, plans, and recommended treatments. This part is where having sufficient and clear documentation is really important. The MPS wants to understand the building and all of its systems, starting from the outside in. Later comparison photos will be key to obtaining final approval. You must document all elements that will be changed in any way, whether that is repair or replacement with like materials, cleaning methods, etc. This is where reading the standards and preservation briefs on different topics will guide you. When in doubt, ask your SHPO for guidance. In reading appeals that were denied, the biggest trouble people get into is removing historic elements and failing to consult with SHPO. There's no undo button. Once the historic fabric is gone, it's gone. Part three is the final step. Once all work is completed as detailed and the building is put into use, it's really critical that any changes from the previous planned or preliminary approvals are discussed. Following the same layout as Part 2, the photos and narrative show the completed work. Once the MPS gives final approval, the application is sent to the IRS. This is a very simplified look at the three parts of the HTC app. In reality, each step requires detailed work among many disciplines to put together. There are firms who specialize in this process and nonprofits who help provide assistance. Check the links in the reference section for more detail. Now, let's talk about things to consider to help you decide whether it makes sense to pursue this process. If the building is not a certified historic structure or has a realistic possibility of becoming one, you should probably stop there. If the building has lost most of its original components or has been moved, it's unlikely a good candidate. If the building is only perhaps listed locally in a city or state inventory, that doesn't mean it will automatically get approved as a historic structure for tax credit purposes. Again, consult with the SHPO and local folks to gauge what they think the chances are of being successful. If the building is a supporting one within a district, you've likely got a strong case, but you must take the next steps to update the research on the property, which may have been minimal in any inventory done years ago. There's a separate application for the National Register nomination that must be submitted concurrently if the building is not listed at all. Your SHPO is there to help you with this process, and you want to engage them early and often. Now, what are your plans for this building? If it's a different use, is this even allowed in the zoning code for this property? The questions of what's allowed by your local jurisdiction is critical to answer early. The next question is, are there enough qualified rehabilitation expenses, known as QRE, to qualify for the credit? You cannot count the cost of the purchase, only the amount spent on QRE. Well, what's considered a QRE? That's defined by the IRS, and here's where appropriate tax advice is necessary. This is a good time to remind people that when it comes to historic tax credits, the standards for preservation take precedence to local code. That means just because you can do it under the building code doesn't mean it's going to be acceptable to the MPS or vice versa. The process can take years depending on the project to reach certification. If it is a large project with multiple structures, it's possible to do a phase project over 5 years. But the end result of putting all the pieces together is incredibly worth it, and that's where the magic happens. So far, I've been talking about federal historic tax credits, but some 39 states offer a matching credit. The programs are very diverse. Some states even offer credits for homeowners, which the federal program does not. The National Trust for Historic Preservation maintains an excellent website with a description of each state's program and relevant links. Combining both federal, state, and other credits like low-income housing, new market, and opportunity zones can all work together to create a viable project. Various entities offer guidance, like the National Trust, their subsidiaries like Main Street America and the National Trust Community Investment Program. You should also consult a qualified tax professional about how the credits work and understand fully whether the process is going to produce sufficient benefit. In the reference section, I've included other resources to learn more about the process. If you're passionate about seeing revitalization in your community of historic buildings, I hope you found this primer helpful.